Meet Namiki Haruka. Homeboy spent years grinding low-level mobs, and he finally clawed his way to the dungeon's absolute peak. One massive problem, though. He bumps into the worst boss imaginable, Yukimura Shinji. This arrogant S-rank powerhouse flat-out refuses to breathe the same air as a so-called weakling. Namiki tries throwing hands, but Shinji's gravity magic absolutely flattens him. Even maxing out at level 100, our guy's stats are basically garbage compared to the elite hunters. Crumpled up like a piece of trash, he gets brutally beaten and tossed straight into the dungeon's pitch-black abyss to rot. Fast forward a few years, Shinji is raiding a totally different zone, staring down an impossible boss that's about to wipe his entire squad. Out of nowhere, every single monster gets sliced into ribbons. Enter Namiki. He's back, dripping with pure, undeniable aura and flexing god-tier confidence. Shinji's jaw drops, utterly paralyzed, seeing a ghost walking right toward him. The bully snaps out of it, swearing to crush him all over again, and immediately triggers that exact same gravity trick. But this time, the magic bounces off Namiki like a light breeze. Why? Because our boy is rocking level 6000 with absolutely broken stats. Panicking, the S-rank coward snatches a hostage, desperately trying to bail. But before he can even blink, Namiki carves right through his stomach without breaking a sweat. The so-called genius collapses to his knees, sobbing uncontrollably and begging for his life, while the entire raid party watches. Namiki has officially unlocked a realm of power humanity couldn't even dream of. From now on, the whole world bows to the dungeon's brand new god. Want to know how he pulled off this insane glow-up? Let's rewind the tape back to the exact second he plunged into the abyss. Hitting rock bottom, he jolts awake without a single bruise on him. Popping open his status window, his jaw hits the floor, every single stat just completely doubled. Not only that, his skill tree is loaded with brand new perks, and his level just spiked to 101. The ultimate limiter just shattered. Getting to his feet, he's totally bewildered, but feels practically weightless. Gripping his blade, it suddenly flows like an extension of his own arm. Before he can even process the upgrade, Anorthrus jumps him a massive, two-headed hellhound, literally breathing fire. The beast lunges, spewing intense heat, but a brand new resistance passive triggers instantly, absorbing the blaze. Right on cue, an appraisal skill kicks in, scanning the monster's every twitch. 20 seconds in, he easily reads the hound's attack path. By second 36, he isolates a blind spot and cleanly lops off one of its heads. The remaining head snaps wildly, desperate for payback, but Namiki ruthlessly jams his steel straight down its throat, dropping the beast cold. Boom, another fresh skill drops into his inventory. But suddenly, the interface starts fiercely glitching out, leaving our guy seriously questioning what kind of crazy hack he just unlocked. The ability is dubbed Insight, allowing him to peel back the layers and see the absolute core of any target. He squints at the screen, struggling to wrap his head around its potential. Honestly, it sounds exactly like a starter pack passive given to rookie adventurers. If it's such a basic drop, why was he locked out of it this whole time? Shrugging it off, he decides to take it for a spin. Flipping Insight on, he quickly realizes that if the Hellhound had been a higher tier, he could have ripped way more data from it. Remembering Shinji's taunt about him being the only casualty, he figures that scumbag definitely fed Himawari a twisted version of the story. If that's the reality up top, Namiki has zero time to waste, even with a strange, lingering ache pulsing through his body that he can't quite pinpoint. The system finishes crunching the numbers, and the results flash on his retina. Things are about to get infinitely worse. Turns out, that terrifying twin-headed dog was literally just a puppy. Doing the math, that horrifying detail means he plunged all the way down to the hellish 5th floor. Sprinting alongside the underground river might lead him to a safe zone. Catch is, the entire route is probably crawling with absolute nightmares. Whipping his head back, a suffocating wave of pure bloodlust washes over him. He freezes, wondering if the threat is lurking near the drop zone. Alarm bells are ringing in his head. Whatever is stalking him is closing the gap fast. And before he can react, a hidden trap springs right under his boots. Cursing his luck, he refuses to panic. He fires up his calculation passive, letting the system instantly break down the ambush. Glowing trajectories map out the exact flight path of a massive arrow barrage. Armed with the incoming data, he kicks into overdrive, weaving through the deadly crossfire. But the dodge is short-lived. A blaring red alert flashes across his vision. An alpha predator is storming his location. Tapping into the divine oracle, he desperately sifts through the notifications, trying to make sense of the absolute chaos blowing up his interface. Radar locks onto a massive heat signature 120 meters out. It's a hyper-aggressive fire type, and the system immediately starts crunching its power level. His own stats flash up, demanding a ridiculous 1,500,000 experience points to hit the next tier. The math is brutal. He is nowhere near strong enough yet. 3 grueling minutes tick by as he processes it all. A massive wave of appraisal points floods his brain, leaving our hero totally dizzy from the sensory overload. Suddenly, a deafening roar shakes the cavern. He spins around just in time to see a gargantuan shadow erupt from the darkness, absolutely furious. A blinding pillar of flames erupts from its jaws, forcing Namiki to dive straight into the freezing river. He pulls himself out coughing, ironically snagging bonus points for the tactical retreat. Wiping the water from his eyes, the horrifying reality sets in. Standing on the bank is a fully grown, nightmarish adult Orthrus. His theory was spot on, that Pup earlier had passed down some twisted resonance. The alpha lunges, and Namiki dodges by pure inches, almost becoming Puppy Chow twice in one day. Every time he barely escapes its fangs, his point counter skyrockets. Still, dancing with a boss-level threat is burning his stamina, and he knows this lethal game of tag has a time limit. Amidst the absolute chaos, his interface dings with another massive points dump. He's stacking up a fortune, completely clueless about what this currency even buys him. What he does know: his current raw power isn't enough to scratch this titan. Flipping into survival mode, he instantly starts mapping out a high-stakes escape route. If he keeps merely dodging, he's going to collapse from pure exhaustion. And with the system loudly reminding him that 3 precious minutes have already vanished, the clock is ticking hard on his survival. The system went absolutely crazy. His appraisal points skyrocketed, doubling in an instant, while Divine Sense unlocked a whole new arsenal of broken skills. Glowing blue screens spammed his vision, making his head spin. When the digital storm finally cleared, his combat experience slammed into a solid A rank. A jaw-dropping 1,500,000 points flooded his stats, launching him up 50 levels in a single breath. Honestly, Namiki was completely lost. He hadn't even flatlined that two-headed Orthros yet. The math wasn't mathing, it seriously felt like the universe was glitching out on him. But overthinking gets you killed in the dungeon. Survival mode kicked in, only to be interrupted by a chilling, phantom giggle echoing through the chaos. The voice mocked him, dropping a massive bombshell. He was catching all this heat because he slaughtered the beast's baby, and Mama was out for blood. The monster lunged, unleashing a relentless barrage of strikes. Meanwhile, Namiki's brain scrambled, trying to pinpoint the source of that telepathic hacking. Some random girl had basically rented space in his head, blaming him for the entire mess and smugly declaring his doom was locked in. Whipping around, he demanded answers. Her response? A lazy, half-asleep yawn, basically telling him to solve the mystery himself. This telepathic stalker left him totally mind-blown, but the immediate threat demanded his attention. Pushing the confusion aside, he snapped back to reality. His eyes locked onto the target as he sparked up his divine speed. The system crunched numbers in the background, but his blood ran cold the second he noticed. His body moving on autopilot. Snapping out of the trance, his point balance had surged again, just as lethal bursts of fire scorched the air around him. His current stats were absolute trash against this level of heat. One wrong move, and he was guaranteed to be deep-fried into a pile of ash. Flipping the script, he channeled his water magic, blasting out a high-pressure geyser straight at the beast. The impact was deafening, and the system instantly rewarded the hit with another massive point drop. Namiki was stunned. Since when did mid-tier spells hit like a nuke? The sheer force of the blast caught him off guard as a literal hydro dragon roared out of his glowing magic circle. Logic flew out the window. This shouldn't be happening, but he wasn't about to question a cheat code. He spammed the attack, driving the surging torrent right through the beast's thick hide. A massive red critical hit flashed across his vision as the behemoth collapsed. Yet, against all odds, its massive chest kept heaving. Its HP pool was genuinely insane. Refusing to give it a second chance, Namiki gripped his blade and dashed in for the execute. One clean slice, and the boss was officially deleted. The system went into overdrive, processing the kill and dumping an ocean of points straight into his status, locking him in at A rank. The optimized combat algorithm blessed him with a staggering 9 million points. That payload catapulted him up 300 levels, cracking open the high-tier magic tree for all 4 of his elemental affinities. It finally clicked: his appraisal trait, the one he trashed as totally useless, was actually a god-tier analyzer, breaking down everything down to the literal flow of time itself. Now upgraded to its divine form, it acted like a personal AI, auto-tracking every single microscopic drop of EXP needed to scale up. Better yet, it basically handed him a walkthrough, highlighting the fastest grinding routes and dropping pinpoint-accurate rewards. By calculating the massive level gap and his combat flexes, the system went wild. He had effectively unlocked a mythic tier ability that farmed astronomical amounts of EXP. That insane grind session alone bagged him roughly 100 crucial stat points. No cap. That explained exactly how he hit level 100 so fast. Without this broken divine skill, he would have stayed stuck in the mud forever. Now, the skill ceiling was completely shattered. He could feel the raw potential coursing through his veins. He was about to become untouchable. For the first time, crushing Shinji with his bare hands wasn't just a pipe dream, it was a loaded promise. Pushing himself off the ground, the grind set took over. He wasn't stopping here. This hellscape demanded way more firepower if he wanted to make it out breathing, and destroying Shinji was still the ultimate boss fight. Fueled by pure spite and determination, he squeezed the lucky charm Himawari gave him, vowing to master this broken appraisal system once he escaped. While he plotted his revenge tour, that enigmatic girl was lurking in the shadows, smirking as her monstrous pet got folded like laundry. She had to hand it to him. The kid actually had the spine to clutch the win on his own. The boy's true awakening had officially launched. Cut back to reality. Himawari was glued to her TV screen in her living room, watching an emergency broadcast drop from the Explorers Association. The anchor delivered a devastating blow. D-rank hunter, Namiki, had allegedly perished on the very first floor. The ceramic mug slipped from Himawari's hands, shattering into pieces as her world stopped spinning. The official report cited Shinji Yukimura, who spun a dark lie about finding Namiki's corpse absolutely mangled beyond recognition, claiming only his tattered backpack survived the wreckage. Guilt crashed down on Himawari. If only she had begged him to drop the hunter life, he'd still be here. Yet, a tiny spark of denial whispered in her mind. Was he actually gone? Scrubbing the hot tears from her face, a sudden knock at her front door made her jump. Pulling it open, she found Shinji standing on her porch, acting totally casual after ghosting them for ages. With narrowed eyes, she demanded to know why he was there. Playing it cool, the snake claimed he was just in the neighborhood, and figured he'd drop in. Then, with a fake sympathetic look, he held up Namiki's battered backpack, playing the role of the grieving friend returning lost cargo. Spotting that familiar bag, Himawari completely dropped her guard. She cracked the front door open to grab it, completely clueless about the trap she just walked into. A twisted smirk flashed across Shinji's face. The second she stepped back, he activated his gravity powers, violently launching her across the living room before slamming the door shut. Crushing her against the floorboards, he burst into a psychotic fit of laughter, sarcastically asking why she looked so stressed. Completely immobilized under the crushing weight, Himawari gritted her teeth and demanded to know what his sick game was. Feigning concern, Shinji leaned in to ask if she was hurt. She smacked his hand away in disgust, which only made this absolute psychopath laugh even harder. You do not just survive the infamous sweet floor by being weak. Her mental fortitude was off the charts. Fighting against the suffocating gravitational pull, she desperately tried to force herself up. Watching her struggle, Shinji casually dropped a bomb, asking if Namiki's tragic death was still messing with her head. Staring into his dead eyes, a chilling realization hit Himawari. This dude was entirely unhinged. Shinji quickly figured out his mind control tricks were practically useless against her iron will, but he still held all the cards. Furious, Himawari screamed at him to explain this sudden betrayal. His response? Viciously stomping on Namiki's belongings. He confessed he had been obsessively tracking his so-called childhood bestie for years. According to him, Namiki was pathetic and weak, yet disgustingly kind, always living his best life while treating Shinji like he did not even exist. That festering jealousy had mutated into pure hatred. Shinji swore to drag our main character through pure hell until his spirit entirely shattered. But since Namiki was supposedly 6 feet under, Shinji just chuckled, admitting he got a massive thrill out of watching everyone else mourn. Tears of absolute rage streaming down her face, Himawari spat back, calling him a pathetic piece of trash who completely lost his mind. That clearly struck a nerve. Flashing a dead-eyed smile, he dialed up the gravity, scolding her for being disrespectful, while loudly claiming he was perfectly sane. He mocked her status as a top-tier rank A explorer, sarcastically suggesting that someone with such a massive fanbase should not be dropping insults like that. He even weaponized her grief, whispering that Namiki would be heartbroken watching her act this way. Himawari was utterly mind-blown that his toxic jealousy over one guy had pushed him to this level of insanity. Letting out a dramatic sigh, Shinji declared this chat was officially over and cranked the gravitational crushing force to the absolute maximum. Cut to somewhere entirely different, Namiki whipped his head around, every instinct screaming that a new, terrifying beast had just entered the arena. His radar skills drew a complete blank. Out of nowhere, that mysterious female voice echoed again, roasting humanity for always rushing to scan their enemies. She admitted she had taken some serious losses from that exact habit in the past, but this time, she came perfectly prepped. Hearing this, Namiki's brain went into overdrive, trying to piece together if the creature he just scrapped with had brawled with other hunters before him. A literal water dragon holding a casual conversation was completely unheard of, and he was flying totally blind here. The aquatic beast casually mentioned she was just hanging around for a little chat, asking why he was suddenly giving her the silent treatment. She complained that monologuing was getting boring fast, lecturing him that true power meant having a dominant, intimidating presence. Not backing down, Namiki fired right back, calling her out for being a massive chatterbox. Instantly, the vibe shifted as she glared, asking if he was trying to mock her. He paused for a split second before boldly saying yes. Surprisingly, she actually seemed to vibe with his brutal honesty for a brief moment. But that patience evaporated in a heartbeat. Her killing intent spiked massively as she lunged forward, brutally reminding him that he was just a fragile little human in her eyes. She coldly warned him not to let his ego inflate just because he managed to put down her pet dog. Our boy instantly triggered his physical reinforcement buffs, throwing up a tough front. But internally, he was sweating, desperately hunting for any possible win condition. His only gamble was spamming his divine appraisal skill to trigger a massive power spike mid-fight. Backing down simply was not an option. He had to survive this nightmare dungeon and make it back to the surface. Shinji owed him a massive debt of vengeance, and Namiki was ready to collect. Falling into a combat stance, he formulated a crazy strategy. Blind her with a massive smokescreen of flames, then dash in for a lethal strike. He let a maximum output inferno rip. The dragon did not even flinch, just staring at the blazing heat with mild curiosity. Chaining his skills together, he cast the devastating frenzy dance of flames, summoning a colossal fire phoenix that turned the dungeon into an absolute furnace. Yet, the monster sidestepped the fiery nuke with zero effort. She literally laughed in his face, flexing that this was her domain, and she held the ultimate home court advantage. She bluntly stated his last victory was just a sheer stats difference. To prove her dominance, she casually hijacked his spell and completely wiped it from existence. Absolute panic set in as Namiki realized the concept of spell hijacking did not even exist in his playbook. Seeing his completely clueless expression, she chuckled. She dropped another bombshell. She wielded annihilation-class magic, a tier of power so broken it was not even in the human dictionary. Namiki seriously wondered if this beast was reading his mind. The sheer concept of annihilation-class magic sounded completely overpowered, shattering everything he knew about the magic system. Flexing her knowledge, she explained that an entire mythic tier sat between his advanced spells and her ultimate attacks. The power gap was literally astronomical. To cancel out his pathetic little flames, even a basic special class spell would have done the trick. The craziest part? She was treating this deathmatch like a casual tutorial session. She made it painfully obvious that he was not even a blip on her radar. She dropped the ultimate reality check. To even scratch her, he needed at least 4,000 power points. Namiki's jaw practically hit the floor, because hitting level 4,000 sounded literally impossible. Desperate, he pulled up his system window to check his current stats. The brutal truth stared back at him. He was sitting at a measly level 452, coasting on straight B-rank stats. It hit him he packed enough punch to absolutely obliterate a high-tier Orthros without breaking a sweat. But this girl? She existed in a totally different stratosphere, leaving Namiki scrambling to figure out her true identity. He forced his racing heartbeat to slow down, while she casually dropped how charging in blind had cost her big time in the past. The nightmare kicked off with Orochi, a beast that had spent the last few years bursting out of dungeons to turn cities into rubble. We're talking an ultra-tier dragon packing catastrophic physical might, and flames hot enough to melt reality. Even elite A-rankers got completely wiped, forcing the higher-ups to draft an all-star hit squad just to put this menace down. Mid-fight, they cracked its defense patterns and pivoted to a savage, all-out offensive assault. But even that wasn't enough to slay the beast. Connecting the dots, a chilling realization washed over Namiki. The girl standing right in front of him was Orochi. If that theory held water, his current stats meant instant death. He desperately needed an exit strategy. Playing the stalling game, he kept the conversation rolling, asking why an apex predator even cared about a bottom feeder like him. Her answer? Pure, unadulterated curiosity. She was dying to know how a pathetic human managed to swipe a fraction of her godly power. That was the only reason she hadn't killed him yet, and right on cue, a massive hand phased through a glowing magic circle. The phantom limb shoved an item toward him, leaving a wide-eyed Namiki questioning its origin. Her response? Just some loot stripped off a dead human. Watching her menacing tails whip through the air, he swallowed hard, wondering if more cataclysmic monsters like her were currently bulldozing the planet. Reading between the lines, the terrifying truth clicked that massive arm reaching through the portal was attached to Orochi's actual, monstrous form. Catching his radio silence, Orochi smirked, mocking him for either being completely paralyzed by fear or just too stubborn to speak. Internally, Namiki ran the math based on her flex. He'd need to hit at least level 4,000 just to survive a one-on-one. Victory was totally off the table right now, but he wasn't going down without triggering his ultimate cheat code, God's Test. The skill flared to life, scanning the monster's hidden stats and desperately hunting for a single blind spot. As the system crunched the raw data, a crazy survival plan started forming in Namiki's head. The interface flashed its brutal verdict. He needed exactly 25 million experience points to trigger his next massive power spike. Catching Orochi totally off guard, Namiki exploded forward, locking his grip onto the monstrous arm protruding from the void. With raw force, he obliterated her right arm, ripping a deafening shriek from her throat right as the system locked in its final scan. Landing a critical hit on a disaster-class boss flooded his interface with 25 million points, rocketing him straight to level 2,200. A new skill icon instantly popped up, leaving him absolutely floored by his own insane stat progression. It felt like a glitch in reality, but he had just bagged an overpowered perk called Ultra Physical Enhancement. It all clicked. God's Test had practically handed him this exact playbook, proving why severing that limb was the perfect play. Bleeding out, even Orochi had to respect the sheer audacity of this mortal strike. Still, her ego was bruised, and blinding rage took over. A cheap shot from a weakling? Unforgivable. Namiki tossed out a sarcastic apology, making it clear he had zero time to play because stopping Shinji was top priority. Sure, Himawari was a certified A-rank badass who could handle her own, but a sick feeling in his gut told him he needed to rush to her side immediately. Spotting his split-second distraction, Orochi refused to just stand there looking pretty while missing an entire limb. It was execution time. She commanded her lethal tails to trap him in a deadly dance until she could deliver the finishing blow herself. A blinding strike clipped the air, forcing him into a desperate roll. That's when it hit him. Her missing arm was just the appetizer. The towering, demonic bulk hovering over him was the main course. Her bloodlust was literally choking the oxygen out of the room. Even surfing on his insane level boost, surviving felt like a coin toss. He slammed the activation trigger for God's Test a second time, absorbed the tactical feed, and hardened his flesh like steel. Fighting through agonizing shockwaves of pain, he launched himself straight into the danger zone, only to get swatted away like a fly. The brutal kinetic feedback ripped his blade right out of his grip. His vision blurred as pure agony spiked through his veins. Drained of all offensive power, he could only watch the nightmare escalate. While the interface frantically crunched fresh combat algorithms, the newly rendered text made his blood run cold. Was a comeback actually possible? The prompt flashed in bright neon. Deploy Ultra Physical Enhancement. Burying his doubts, he fully committed, and the second the skill fired up, his entire core ignited like a nuclear reactor, wiping the smirk right off Orochi's face. Skating dangerously close to total sensory overload, he snatched his blade from the dirt and cleaved the abomination straight down the middle. A blue window instantly confirmed the kill, marking God's Test as totally cleared. The post-match screen tallied his brutal combos, flooding his feed with a massive EXP storm. Bagging a flawless AA ranking, proved his raw battle IQ, and showered him with nearly 11 million bonus points. Riding that insane high, Namiki skipped another 600 levels in the blink of an eye. Meanwhile, cutting to Shinji, the guy was frantically blowing up his phone, begging for an emergency evac. Catching his breath while staring at Himawari's unconscious body, our MC quietly bagged 3 brand new skills from the system. We are talking mental mapping, weakness detection, and a massive insight buff. But the dude was seeing stars, totally cooked from spamming that ultra body fortification. His knees buckled. Namiki hit the dirt, coughing up actual blood as pure agony hijacked his nervous system. Completely clueless about why he was glitching out, he ripped open his status window only to find his HP blinking red. And get this, his blood alcohol toxicity was completely off the charts. No shocker, the room was doing backflips. Bro finally realized he could not just spam that OP cheat code without consequences. Glancing back at the fresh kill, a weird, glowing mist started leaking right out of the monster's corpse, floating up like some cursed vapor. This basically confirmed that even though he flatlined the beast, the entity itself was totally still kicking. That phantom gas drifted straight toward the main boss, hitting Namiki with a harsh reality check. He needed to hit level 4,000 minimum to even scratch Orochi. With his current stats, he was straight up fodder. Plus, before fighting any raid boss, he had to backtrack and hunt down Shinji. That traitor had a massive beatdown coming. Suddenly, a random cell phone caught his eye in the rubble. It was the exact same device Orochi had teleported through that freaky magic circle earlier, so he snatched it up without hesitation. Namiki went full sprint, firing up his new mental mapping skill, which dropped an absolute bombshell on him. Bro was not chilling on floor 5 anymore, he was trapped down on the 20th floor. We are talking about the absolute deepest dungeon layer any human had ever survived, and his own personal record was only floor 10. It honestly blew his mind that Shinji's dirty sneak attack had literally blasted him all the way from the first floor down to the 20th. Booting up his God's Test ability, our guy pinpointed his current location pushing through the 18th floor, while his main target was lurking down on the 25th. The interface flashed, calculating they would cross paths in exactly 45 minutes. but Orochi's true form might crash the party way before that. The system also started crunching the numbers, spitting out the exact level and XP grind required to actually survive this death trap. While racking his brain for an exit strategy, his radar pinged aggressively, warning him about a massive swarm of high-tier mobs straight ahead. Seconds later, a whole squad of nightmarish creatures blocked his path, forcing him to snap into survival mode. Zero time to chill. He had to speed-run this dungeon and farm XP like a madman. He immediately popped his analyzer skills, scanning the beasts to highlight every single weak point. Namiki locked in, reading their movements, dynamically shifting his combat style to exploit those exposed hitboxes with absolute precision. He sliced through 3 massive Baphomets, racking up a mountain of points and breezing through another phase of the Gods test. His level-up notifications practically spammed the screen, but the physical toll was shredding his muscles. Pivoting sharply, he caught a massive 3-headed hound rushing him, so he instantly unleashed a devastating hydroblast. The spell connected beautifully, totally obliterating one of the Cerberus skulls with a critical strike, but this tanky demon refused to drop dead. Namiki just gritted his teeth, ready to eliminate absolutely anything that dared to step into his zone. He was determined to milk the Gods test, for every single drop of advantage it offered. Following another tactical scan, he secured a whopping 70,000 XP. Hitting the crazy milestone of level 3000, he naturally unlocked a sick new ability called Double Slash. Landing an ultra-rare sword technique caught him off guard, but the guy knew he could not celebrate just yet. That last surviving Baphomet apparently radioed for backup, and now these creeps were literally communicating in some twisted demonic dialect. Operating on practically zero stamina, Namiki flashed back to Himawari, swearing to himself he would not fade out in this godforsaken pit. Suddenly, the air grew heavy with an overwhelmingly dark aura, forcing him to whip around. Lurking in his blind spot was a colossal titan with glowing crimson eyes, dwarfing every other mob in the room. It ambushed him instantly, launching our MC through the air like a ragdoll, leaving him wildly confused as to why stone golems were even spawning on this specific level. It looked like the dungeon ecology was organizing a unified front, considering a whole firing squad of Baphomets simultaneously lit up the room with runic magic circles. Caught completely off balance, Namiki narrowly dodged a ruthless artillery strike of dark spells. Mid-air, a magical snare clamped around his ankle, dragging him violently downward, forcing his survival instincts into overdrive. The Gods test system instantly rebooted, running millions of simulations to map out a counterattack, all while he was physically pinned down by a dozen furious Baphomets charging their ultimate moves. The second the combat algorithm hit 100%, Namiki executed the flawless combo, unleashing his new double slash to carve through the mob. He instantly vaporized the frontline attackers, ignoring the long-range snipers trying to gun him down from the back. Going full berserker mode, he bulldozed forward while his system grade skyrocketed. Yet, spamming his kit like that was physically destroying his muscles, and just to make things worse, a rogue golem blindsided him from the rear. Cut back to Himawari, she finally jolted awake, heavily disoriented inside a barricaded cell. That creep, Shinji Yukimura, chuckled darkly, mocking her for finally rejoining the living. He casually flexed that his hypnosis spell lost its juice, genuinely clapping for her insane mental fortitude. He shamelessly bragged about his usual manipulation tactics working better on larger crowds of girls, while Himawari just snapped, demanding to know his endgame. Shinji violently grabbed her chin, spitting that he always despised her, mostly because her stubborn eyes screamed that she still thought Namiki was breathing. It totally baffled him how she could constantly trash-talk our MC's dungeon skills, yet still heavily care about his safety. Staring daggers at him, Himawari revealed that after a massive past trauma, Namiki became dangerously obsessed with gaining power. He literally started throwing his own life on the line, just to level up. She straight up begged him to pull the plug before he got wrecked. But at the end of the day, it was his call, his life, his rules. Deep down, she knew he wasn't the type to just roll over and die. She clung to the hope that he was still out there breathing. Meanwhile, Namiki squared up with the golem, unleashing a tidal wave of water magic that completely shattered its rocky shell. Boom, another stage of the Gods trial cleared. He bagged 9 million experience points, watching his levels skyrocket. Dying in this hellhole wasn't an option, not when he promised to make it back to Himawari, no matter the cost. The system pinged, announcing he just hit level 600. Right after, a crazy notification popped up. Forced reconstruction was initiating immediately. Namiki blinked, completely lost. What the heck did reconstruction even mean? Suddenly, his limbs felt like lead, his insides burning as if his very DNA was tearing itself apart. The agony finally dialed back, only for him to realize he was trapped in a meat grinder of monsters, with Baphomet chanting absolute gibberish in the background. He smashed against an invisible wall, a barrier boxing him in. Before he could even process the trap, the god's trial rebooted. Points started racking up on the screen. He lunged for his blade just as a fresh wave of lethal magic rained down on him. Sprinting for his life, Namiki wove through the blast zone, barely parrying the deadly strikes. But Baphomet was relentless. Namiki had to spam double slash like a madman, clashing steel against pure arcane energy. Every deflected hit racked up more points. 30 agonizing minutes dragged by with him stuck on the defensive, his muscles screaming and ready to snap under the insane pressure. That stupid barrier totally shut down his offensive plays. The lingering pain from his internal rewiring threw off his rhythm, causing him to fumble dodges he'd normally ace. Just as he was about to tap out, the god's trial finally called it, tallying up his massive survival score. Another 8 million experience points flooded in, pushing him through multiple rank ups in mere minutes. He was now sitting pretty at level 3,800. He was only 200 levels shy of hitting the cap needed to fully trigger that mysterious reconstruction sequence. He was still trying to decode the system's cryptic messages when Orochi suddenly materialized, eyeing his battered, gasping form. Whipping his head around, Namiki locked eyes with Orochi's true vessel. Rocking a humanoid form, she looked completely trashed, but announced she had finally caught up. His mind raced. How the heck did this boss monster speedrun 5 entire floors in just a handful of minutes to track him down? She casually phased right through the barrier, stepping over the absolute bloodbath he had left in his wake. It suddenly clicked. Every single mob he had butchered was acting on her orders. Orochi snapped her fingers, demanding his attention. But Namiki was totally distracted. He stared at her right arm in pure disbelief. He knew for a fact he had sliced that thing clean off earlier. How was it perfectly intact? Did this absolute menace have high-speed regeneration? Catching his bewildered stare, Orochi scoffed, claiming the amputation stung a little. But losing a limb was basically child's play for her. Despite looking rough, she made it crystal clear she wanted to snap his neck right then and there. But first, she demanded her stolen property back. Totally clueless, the MC played dumb, asking what she was yapping about. Orochi's patience instantly vanished, growling that he knew exactly what she wanted. She jabbed a finger at the random loot he had snatched from the floor. Realizing she meant the smartphone, Namiki tried to bargain. Would she let him walk if he tossed it over? Orochi gave a villainous smirk. Not a chance. She admitted he had leveled up nicely, but he was still leagues away from actually dropping her. Namiki did the math and knew she wasn't bluffing. He desperately needed those final 200 levels to go toe-to-toe with her. At his current output, his body would flatline from pure exhaustion way before he reached the threshold. Orochi hit him with a final ultimatum: hand over the phone, or die screaming. Right on cue, the divine trial system rebooted. Out of options, Namiki locked in. It was do or die time. As the interface crunched his required experience and synced his movements, he exploded forward, aiming a massive double slash right at her throat. She swatted the blade away effortlessly, catching only a tiny paper cut on her cheek. Preparing to absolutely demolish him, she laughed, calling his ultimate attack totally pathetic. But behind the scenes, Namiki's experience bar devoured 13 million points, making his levels skyrocket. The second he broke level 4,000, his biology forcefully reconstructed itself. A massive shockwave blasted out, making even Orochi stumble back. The dust settled to reveal Namiki's brand new, evolved form. Orochi felt an oppressive, terrifying aura rolling off him. All his agonizing pain vanished instantly. His senses were dialed up to 11, catching every micro-movement in the room. Realizing the tables had turned, Orochi panicked and commanded her monster horde to jump him. A deadly barrage of spells and claws swarmed him from every angle. Namiki casually vaulted into the air, ghosting through the death trap like it was slow motion. Orochi's jaw dropped at his godly new speed. In the blink of an eye, he completely neutralized the impossible crossfire, batting away attacks like annoying flies. He fired up the divine test scanner, getting instant results. The system flagged Orochi as a literal disaster-class threat, commanding 12 elite units. But with his cracked new abilities, Namiki stuck a flawless superhero landing right amidst the chaos. He blitzed straight into the monster pack. Orochi watched in absolute shock as his speed broke the sound barrier, easily body-bagging every minion in his path. He redlined his evolved double slash, turning into a literal blender. The shockwaves multiplied, deleting the horde before they could even blink. The system flashed his updated stats. He was finally strong enough to take the boss head-on. But amidst his rampage, Orochi spotted some fatal gaps in his stance. He locked onto her blind spot and launched a massive strike, but the blast barely clipped her shoulder. Our boy sidestepped just in the nick of time, practically gliding across the dirt. Pissed off, Orochi scoffed and unleashed a homing water missile right at his face. But suddenly, Namiki straight up cloned himself, glitching into multiple physical copies surrounding her. Caught completely off guard by this insane move, the demon caught a brutal beatdown from every single angle. Just like that, our hero secured the bag. A heavy sigh escaped his lungs the second his interface flashed, the elimination confirmed notification. Staring at the absolute wasteland left behind, he inhaled the dust and realized he had genuinely soloed this boss. Still, a dark thought crept into his mind about what kind of monster he was becoming. The visceral crunch of slicing through flesh lingered on his hands. His memory of the slaughter was totally blurred. Even for an absolute beast, Orochi was supposed to be a top-tier threat. Fighting her head-on should have been a literal death sentence. Thankfully, his sudden power awakening totally clutched up the victory. Now, it was time to dip before things went south again. But out of nowhere, a psychotic laugh ripped through the silence, mocking him and claiming she never expected to fake a loss so convincingly. Whipping around, our guy froze at the mind-bending scene unfolding. The crushed corpse of the demon started radiating blinding light, chatting casually, like she had not just been butchered, jaw on the floor. He questioned if this psycho was completely unkillable, while Orochi just cackled, straight up confessing she totally slept on his potential even after taking that savage combo. She decided playtime was officially over, and she needed to wipe him out at full power. Honestly, it had been ages since a challenger actually made her break a sweat. Warning sirens blared in his head as the system detected mana levels absolutely skyrocketing past the red line. Namiki watched in pure horror as severed limbs snapped back into place while she giggled at his terrified face. Even her nightmare pets geared up for round 2. A massive flashbang of aura forced him to shield his vision. Once the glare faded, the boss stood towering over him, flanked by an entire squad of freaky beasts. It was hard to wrap his head around the fact that she had been hiding an entire zoo of nightmares inside her own body. Gently petting one of her grotesque summons, the villain teased that he was too paralyzed by fear to even formulate a scream. Another twisted giggle slipped out, bragging that literally 0 players could have predicted this plot twist after the insane bloodbath they just had. Our main character had successfully triggered her phase 2, meaning the kid gloves were totally off. Slashing the air, Orochi cracked her massive appendages like whips, while her swarm of abominations blitzed him simultaneously. Namiki barely matrix dodged the ambush and instantly spammed his divine test skill. The interface flooded his vision with fresh boss stats, locking onto her 6 lethal tails. Every single minion rocking totally unique superpowers. Even though they lacked the boss-level stats, these goons hit hard enough to force him into a desperate sprint. He booked it across the arena, but the sheer volume of enemies was insane, totally cornering him in a death trap. Despite his epic level-up moments ago, he was simply not built to solo an entire army yet. The immense pressure broke his defense, and a jaw full of razor teeth clamped into his flesh, slamming him hard into the dirt. The kinetic force tossed him like a rag doll, sending his blade flying out of reach. Shaking off the dust, he scrambled up, absolutely raging. Facing a hive mind level of teamwork, even a microsecond delay meant death. His interface flashed critical warnings about massive blood pouring from his mangled right shoulder. Strolling forward like she owned the place, the demon mercilessly roasted his sudden drop in agility and raw damage. Smelling blood in the water, she commanded her horde to execute him on the spot. Panic set in as Namiki desperately calculated how to survive a scenario 10 times worse than Phase 1. His brain went into overdrive, hunting for any tiny glitch in their formation to launch a comeback. The euphoric high of dominating the fight completely evaporated into thin air. Spamming his ultimate attack one more time might clutch the round, but the recoil damage could literally tear his own body apart. Relying purely on the divine test algorithm, he locked in on the mathematically perfect counterattack. A wild, chaotic energy ignited in his core, threatening to overload his system. As the beast lunged for his throat, he pivoted flawlessly and snapped back with a heavy strike. Reclaiming his weapon, he hurled the steel directly at the monster's fangs, but the armored jaws just tanked the massive hit. The sheer gap in their stats was suffocating. His epic awakening turned out to be a massive disappointment, leaving him getting absolutely clapped in combat. Agony scorched through his veins as his vision blurred, right before eating a point-blank blast of demonic hellfire. The impact launched him across the battlefield, juggling him mid-air through an endless combo of brutal hits. He was taking so much heat that the system auto-triggered an emergency damage mitigation protocol. But even that shield could not absorb the full nuke. He was 1 hit point away from a game over, violently crashing into the rubble. The villain yelled across the arena, demanding to know when he would drop the pathetic tough guy act, and signaled her swarm to secure the kill. Bleeding out, our guy still refused to quit, frantically piecing together a big brain play. Just as the arrogant demon questioned his total paralysis, his eyes locked onto an anomaly, one summon behaving completely out of sync. This specific freak was casually tasting the fresh blood off its claws, causing the rest of the pack to stop and stare in total confusion. Orochi stood there, completely lost, sensing a massive shift in the vibe. Out of nowhere, her entire monster squad started stumbling around like they just left a frat party. One taste of Namiki's blood, and their killer instinct totally vanished, turning these terrifying beasts into oversized puppies, while Orochi watched in pure disbelief. Staring at their blank, derpy expressions, the pieces finally clicked together in our boy Namiki's head. That crazy body enhancement he popped earlier had literally spiked his blood alcohol content, turning his veins into pure liquor. Chugging his blood didn't trigger a berserker rage, it straight up wasted them, perfectly mirroring the ancient myth where Yamada no Orochi got defeated by getting absolutely sloshed. A wicked smirk spread across Namiki's face as he realized the massive glitch he could exploit, while Orochi shrieked at her minions to wake the hell up. She was literally seething, screaming at them to drop the goofy act, but her command over them was completely shattered. Despite witnessing the entire sequence of events, the beasts just kept tumbling over themselves like total fools. Whipping around, Orochi's jaw dropped as she caught our MC slicing his own arm to draw a fresh crimson pool. If these freaks were thirsty for a drink, he was about to open an open bar. Panicking, the boss monster demanded to know what twisted scheme he was brewing. Firing up his physical enhancement to the absolute max, Namiki flashed a cocky grin and dared the entire horde to rush him at once. The horde stampeded forward, and he knew instantly that this fresh batch of spiked blood would flip the entire battle in his favor. Boom. The second the frontline beast sunk its teeth in, it got instantly obliterated on the sauce and froze midair, exactly according to plan. But before he could capitalize, a brutal wave of agony ripped through his core, forcing him to his knees. A second beast lunged, missing his head by inches, leaving him scrambling up its rugged scales just to survive. Yet, even while fighting for his life, he kept hyping them up to take another sip of his lethal cocktail. Within seconds, the whole pack was stumbling around hammered, with Namiki sarcastically asking if they liked the vintage. With the mob completely neutralized, he knew he had to strike now. Suddenly, a blade pierced his back. Orochi materialized from the shadows, whispering that his massive brain always lagged at the worst possible moments. But matching her sadistic grin, our MC pivoted effortlessly, mocking her for being so basic. She had already pulled this exact sneak attack earlier, meaning he already downloaded her whole moveset and saw the strike coming from a mile away. Utterly shaken, the Serpent Queen stammered, demanding his next move. He didn't even give her a second to retreat, snatching her up instantly. The goal was brutally simple: force-feed her the spiked blood. She thrashed wildly, screaming at him to back off, but the trap was already sprung. The intoxication hit her system like a freight train, slurring her words as she pathetically pleaded for release. Shoving her away, Namiki created some distance. She barely managed to stay on her own 2 feet, completely wrecked by the alcohol, yet still tried spitting venomous threats at him, even as his own vision started blurring into darkness. This was the ultimate opening, prompting him to lock in and push past his limits for a final showdown. Barely hanging on to reality, he blitzed forward to deliver the executioner's strike, while the Serpent Queen desperately shrieked at her army for backup, totally baffled by their dead silence. Instead of jumping to her defense, the absolute units just let out massive sighs and face-planted into the dirt, completely passing out. Watching her empire crumble, she shrieked in confusion. Sensing the checkmate, our protagonist redlined his physical enhancement for one last catastrophic blow. Panic finally set into her eyes as she spun around, the terrifying reality hitting her that an actual game over was moments away. With zero hesitation, he tore through the battlefield, slicing the unconscious beasts to ribbons and triggering massive level-up notifications with every kill. Our boy casually blasted past level 6,000. Meanwhile, the scene cuts back to Himawari, who was still locked up in that claustrophobic room. The heavy door creaked open, revealing a familiar silhouette. It was Aoi. Totally stunned, Himawari immediately pressed her about why she was walking around this hostile territory, but the girl just gave a weirdly calm greeting, mentioning she casually dropped by because Shinji texted her an invite. Red flags instantly went up. Himawari snapped, asking if she actually fell for that creep's cheap charm skill. But Aoi's clueless reaction only made the tension skyrocket. Desperate to snap her friend out of it, she practically begged her to realize she was being brainwashed. Instead, Aoi got super defensive, telling her to quit trashing Shinji's name, defending him as her absolute savior, and a genuinely amazing guy. That delusion was exactly why Aoi was dead set on believing Namiki was gone, explaining that during her darkest hour, Shinji had been the one to heal both her shattered heart and her body. Hearing that insane logic only cemented the horrifying truth for Himawari. Her bestie was completely under mind control. Then Aoi dropped a massive bomb, venting about how our MC ghosted her constantly, secretly fueling a deep, toxic jealousy toward Himawari for years. That confession literally left Himawari frozen in shock. Spilling all her bottled-up venom, Aoi confessed she straight-up despised the both of them for the past, leaving her friend absolutely blindsided by the sudden hostility. In her mind, they were an unbreakable duo. Tears streaming down her face, Himawari broke down, crying out that she always viewed her as a precious younger sister and just wanted their bond back. Cue the dramatic villain entrance. Shinji sauntered into the room, faking a polite apology for crashing such a heavy, emotional, sisterly moment. Aoi instantly lit up like a puppy and rushed to his side, while he smoothly cradled her cheek, smoothly manipulating her to play nice with the prisoner. Bowing her head, she quickly apologized for snapping, prompting the absolute psycho to look over and lecture Himawari about treating her cute junior with respect. Not having a single drop of it, Himawari exploded, screaming at him to explain his twisted mind control games. Without missing a beat, Shinji spun the blame right back onto her, claiming her massive ego forced his hand. Since his cheap charm magic bounced right off her, she furiously demanded to know his actual endgame. Flipping his hair, he casually revealed that the Elite Explorers Association slid into his communications with a massive offer. The top brass wanted him leading a lethal strike team to wipe out the Serpent Queen, meaning he was forcibly drafting both girls into his personal vanguard. The whole twisted setup was a trap to blackmail her into submission, using her brainwashed best friend as the ultimate leverage. Aoi snuggled up super close, whining that his touch tickled, while Himawari watched the whole thing, absolutely seething with jealousy. Flashing a cocky grin, Shinji made it crystal clear Himawari was joining their squad. No ifs, ands, or buts, because there was zero chance he'd ever leave Aoi's side. Cut to Namiki, whose HP had just flatlined to a terrifying 5%, leaving him literally knocking on death's door. Yet somehow, hovering right over the abyss, he still felt this strange spark of life. Even with his timer flashing just 137 seconds until game over, logic said he should be unconscious, but instead, he just felt the soft, warm touch of someone brushing against his skin. Plot twist, he was resting his head right in Orochi's lap, utterly clueless, as the system blared a massive warning, 90 seconds remaining. The Demon Queen was fully aware of his ticking clock, leaving Namiki full of regrets, thinking he really should have sliced her head off when he had the chance. Orochi let out a disappointed sigh, casually dropping the bombshell that she was actually 8 different beings combined. To kill her, he'd have to wipe out every single one. Namiki groaned, calling her a total freak. The M word definitely struck a nerve, but she swallowed her pride and admitted his insane power actually blew her mind. He had practically driven them to extinction. Flashing a mysterious smile, she declared she would take him in, just as his doom counter plummeted to 30 seconds. Namiki's brain completely short-circuited at that offer. Orochi rolled her eyes, instantly losing patience, especially since our boy only had 10 seconds left to live. Realizing time was seriously running out, she kicked into high gear and yanked a glowing item straight out of her magical core. He barely choked out a question about her master plan before she flashed a wicked grin and plunged a dagger directly into his heart. Whispering a sweet goodnight to her new master, she triggered the system's divine observation mode, sparking an intense synchronization between them. Their connection levels skyrocketed, locking in a permanent bond that immediately flooded his screen with brand new, overpowered abilities, causing his base stats to explode off the charts. The moment our MC finally snapped his eyes open, he caught a monster hovering right next to him, and instantly bolted upright in pure panic. But he quickly realized the beast was just chilling there, completely harmless. He frantically searched for his blade, coming up empty. Instead of cold steel, his fingers brushed against something soft. Orochi was sound asleep right beside him. Talk about a massive jump scare. His mind raced, trying to process why his deadly rival was snoozing like a baby next to him. And to top it off, bro was buck naked, making an already crazy situation 10 times weirder. Completely speechless, he scrambled to his feet, desperate to find his gear, and dip out of that cave at lightning speed. Suddenly, a little monster waddled over and nudged his leg, forcing Namiki to awkwardly whisper at it to chill. That tiny commotion woke the Demon Queen. She grumbled groggily before spotting him standing there, instantly beaming with joy that her master was finally up. He quickly scavenged a fresh fit to cover himself up. Orochi started hyping up his new look, completely unbothered that she had literally looted those threads from dead humans, deep inside the dungeon. Creepy origin aside, this gear was stacked with heavy magical buffs tailored specifically for his body. Naturally, he demanded some major answers. Namiki was totally baffled about surviving that absolute bloodbath. Hitting a sudden realization, Orochi noticed she had left him entirely in the dark, so they both sat down for a much-needed lore drop. She revealed they were now locked in a magical contract. Yeah, he had technically died, but in that split second, he perfectly synced his life force with hers. Right before fading away, our protagonist suddenly realized that traumatizing memory of the dagger tearing through his chest wasn't a dream. It actually happened. Connecting the dots, he asked if he had mutated into a full-blown monster just like her. Orochi shook her head, explaining that moving forward, their souls were just permanently chained together. Super confused, he asked her to dumb it down. Brainstorming a quick way to demonstrate, She told him to shut his eyes and temporarily hand over his vision to her. Still totally lost, Namiki played along but suddenly asked for her actual name. It hit her that she never gave him a proper intro. Sure, the world knew her as the terrifying Orochi, but her real name was Hachi. Following her instructions, he squeezed his eyes shut, only to get hit with an incredibly trippy sensation, literally watching his own body from a third-person perspective. Hachi teased him, asking how it felt to see himself through her eyes. He confessed it was totally bizarre, but the pieces were finally clicking into place. Bottom line, he had full access to all of Hachi's insane abilities. She giggled, super proud of her quick-learning master. That permanent bond was exactly why his stats had practically broken the system, something she promised to deep dive into later. Flash over to the Explorers Association, where a massive emergency meeting was going down in the third-floor war room. The commander of the strike team, a hardcore rank B hunter named Ishihara Katsuhiko, rounded up the top brass to break down Orochi's recent path of destruction. The beast outbreaks in her linked dungeons had basically gone into hyperdrive. They barely managed to chop off a few of her tails and keep the local cities from turning to ash. Even with heavy backup from the cops and elite detectives, the fallout was catastrophic, leaving entire districts in ruins. Stepping up, Ayaka Kyogoku dropped some heavy intel. Orochi rocked 6 deadly forms, but their last brutal clash had finally exposed a fatal flaw. Get this, the ultimate demon boss was massively weak to high-proof alcohol. During their past brawls, pumping her full of pure booze had actually dealt some critical, game-changing damage. It finally clicked why these legendary monsters could get flat-out wasted, just like people. Suddenly, the ancient myth of Yamada no Orochi made total sense. Ishihara revealed their master plan, partnering up with a mega corporation to flood their arsenal with an ungodly amount of liquor. The strategy was set. They were going to gear up instantly, turn the dungeon's 4th floor into a massive kill zone, and bait Orochi right into their trap. The plan was to get her completely hammered, making her an easy target to take out of the picture. Ayaka hyped up the crowd, emphasizing brutal teamwork, and dropped the news that a specific crew would be taking the vanguard. Right on cue, a cocky voice echoed through the room, claiming they had the front line completely covered. Stepping out of the shadows with absolute swagger was Shinji. He wasn't riding solo, trailing an entire entourage of girls right behind him. Ishihara recognized the guy instantly, politely questioning if a dude with his stats could actually carry this insane raid. Shinji just let out an arrogant chuckle, flexing that his squad was totally locked and loaded. But Ishihara's jaw nearly hit the floor when he scanned the lineup. Beyond just a stacked roster, the legendary Himawari was standing right there in his corner. Cut back to the pitch-black dungeon. Hachi and Namiki were literally surfing an underground river inside a massive, floating water sphere. Namiki was absolutely blown away by this god-tier utility spell, finally clicking the puzzle pieces together. No wonder he kept getting clapped in his past fights. Cruising through the dungeon's aquatic highway explained exactly how she speedran so many levels without breaking a sweat. Hachi giggled, admitting that while the spell was super flashy, it drained her mana like absolute crazy. Transforming straight into her massive dragon form would be 1,000,000 times easier, she casually dropped. Raising an eyebrow, Namiki asked what was stopping her from shifting right then and there. Hachi instantly froze up, signaling to our boy that he just stepped on a massive landmine. With a quiet murmur, she shut down the topic, making it perfectly clear it was off-limits. Catching the incredibly weird vibe, he backed off completely as she reminded him they were literally racing against the clock to escape this hellhole. Out of nowhere, she casually dropped the title Lord Namiki, sending a massive wave of cringe down his spine. She clapped back, claiming it was completely standard protocol since he was technically her master now. While desperately trying to reject the cringe title, he ended up spilling the tea on why they had to hustle. Namiki laid it all out. He had to rescue Himawari from whatever toxic scheme Shinji was brewing. Catching the name, Hachi playfully teased if this girl was his secret girlfriend. Flushing red, he instantly shot that down, claiming she was just a high-tier idol he massively respected. Hachi just let out a knowing chuckle, keeping her real thoughts totally to herself. Meanwhile, our protagonist gripped his fists, finally feeling leveled up enough to absolutely humble Shinji. High above on the 4th floor, a massive squad of raiders was heavily packing the dungeon's grand plaza with survival gear. They had hauled down an insane amount of booze kegs. Even the elite Himawari was getting her hands dirty with the heavy lifting. Spotting her, Ishihara slid over, asking if he could steal a quick second of her time. Giving him the green light, she listened as he poured out his absolute gratitude for her joining this brutal Orochi raid. The guy was straight up fangirling, calling it totally unreal that a high schooler was already debuting as a prodigy raider. She had blitzed her way to an A-rank license faster than anyone in history, becoming an absolute icon for rookies. Suddenly, Ayaka snapped at him, telling him to dial down the fanboy energy, forcing him to quickly backtrack. Shifting the vibe, He bluntly asked why a top-tier star like her was carrying a scrub like Shinji. The dude's reputation was absolute trash in the community. Himawari froze, dark memories flashing through her mind about the vicious blackmail involving Aoi. The sheer psychological torture she had watched unfold made her stomach drop. Seeing her zone out completely, Ishihara gently asked if she was okay. Forcing a fake smile, she brushed it off, claiming she and Shinji just went way back. But internally, she was screaming a blood oath to pull Aoi out of this nightmare. Glaring at Shinji, soaking up attention from his hypnotized harem, including a brainwashed Aoi, her heart ached. If only Namiki was standing here right now, this entire toxic script would be flipped. Catching her death glare, Shinji flashed a psychotic, mocking grin, totally feeding off her silent misery. Swallowing the disrespect, Himawari hardened her resolve, vowing to shatter his mind control magic at all costs. Out of nowhere, a scout started screaming that an Orochi-level threat was rapidly closing the distance, sending the entire fourth-floor plaza into an absolute chaotic scramble. The radar picked up 15 shadowy humanoid figures moving in fast. Down below, our boy's instincts fired off, ordering Hachi to hit the emergency brakes. Totally confused, she violently killed their momentum, throwing Namiki off balance as he groaned about the massive whiplash. Rolling her eyes, Hachi fired back that he literally just gave the absolute order to halt. Namiki quickly shushed her, whispering that enemy radar was sweeping their zone. And worse, those crosshairs were locked directly onto her. While Hachi tilted her head in pure confusion, he pulled out that burner phone he had looted earlier. Glancing at the glowing screen, her blood ran cold. The breaking news feed showed her monster children being targeted in the raid team's 8th major wipeout op. The brutal reality hit her like a truck. The hit squad was already camped up ahead, prompting her to look to Namiki for the next play. Playing it stealthy, Namiki ordered her to hold position while he fired up his divine appraisal skill. His eyes went wide with pure shock when the UI highlighted Himawari standing right next to Shinji. It clicked instantly. The villains had definitely fed her a fake story about his death, and she bought it hook, line, and sinker. Still, his brain scrambled, trying to piece together this insane timeline. Hachi was tracking the exact same target. She already knew this Shinji creep was the main villain behind her master's trauma, spotting his toxic aura from a mile away. Seeing the literal girl of her master's dreams standing with the enemy boss, Hachi couldn't help but let out a dark, amused little laugh. Cutting back to the surface, Shinji aggressively nudged Himawari, barking that they were taking point and she better pull off some flashy moves. A brainwashed Aoi snickered, taunting Himawari not to make their leader look like a total joke. Shinji burst into a villainous cackle at the shade, while Aoi giggled a fake apology. Through all this venom, Himawari just kept her mouth shut, biting her tongue. Her brain was working in overdrive trying to hack his mind control, but with zero clues, her only play was staying glued to Aoi's side. This upcoming boss fight against the Orochi might just be the perfect chaos she needed to strike. Suddenly, the entire plaza went dead silent, as a blood-curdling scream echoed from the deep caverns. A scout violently shoved binoculars into Ishihara's hands, panicking about an off-the-charts thermal spike. The raid boss braced for the Orochi's arrival, but the truth was way crazier. Bursting through the shadows was an absolute stampede of rabid beasts, ruthlessly hunting down a lone woman. Ishihara barked out the orders, keep the girl safe at all costs. The play was simple. Snatch the hostage, while Shinji's squad took the heat from Orochi. The scouts nodded along. Even Shinji fell in line, though you could tell he was absolutely fed up with playing second fiddle to the commander. He barked the command, and his squad of girls launched forward. They unleashed their abilities, clashing head-on with the swarm of beasts. Flashing a toxic smirk, Shinji ordered Himawari to join the bloodbath. Backed into a corner, she gritted her teeth and drew her weapon. The decoy hostage tripped, screaming in pure terror. Without missing a beat, Himawari dashed in, her blade carving a path right to her. She swatted the beast away like a fly and checked on the victim. The woman nodded, pouring on the fake gratitude for the clutch save. Backup finally rolled up to secure the VIP, dumping the remaining mob aggro onto Himawari. Phase 1 was officially in the bag. Plot twist, the rescued hostage was actually Hachi in disguise. Watching Himawari flex her skills, Hachi silently admitted Namiki's crush actually had hands. Walking past Shinji, his eyes totally undressed her, already plotting how to slide into her good graces later. Hachi mentally gagged at the absolute lack of drip, but she played it cool, waiting for the perfect window. With all the players on the board, Hachi finally cut her decoy tails loose. Mid-swing, Himawari watched the monster she was fighting completely ditch her. The beast locked onto Shinji and his squad, skyrocketing the tension. Shinji whipped around, pure panic, painting his face as the monster dove straight for his throat. He scrambled to dodge, but a massive shockwave blasted his back. His brain short-circuited. Why was this boss suddenly treating him like public enemy number 1? Tapping into his arsenal, He fired off his gravity magic, aiming to crush the beast into the dirt. But instead of a heavy slam, his powers just fizzled out into thin air. Hachi was pulling the strings. She chuckled under her breath, spamming magic nullification to let the monsters absolutely terrorize the cocky leader. Shinji ate the dirt, completely losing his mind as he screamed at his squad to act as meat shields. The brainwashed girls blindly moved to obey. But out of nowhere, Himawari threw herself in the crossfire, tanking a brutal hit and collapsing. Hachi hissed in frustration, cursing the girl for pulling such a reckless, suicidal stunt. She knew her master would absolutely lose it if he witnessed this. Himawari struggled to push herself up. Nearby, Aoi just stared blankly, her hypnotized brain failing to process why someone would take a bullet for her. Spitting blood, she swore to protect Aoi and Namiki, her precious pupils. But Shinji just doubled down on his mind control, ordering Aoi to stay completely nerfed. Pure terror gripped Himawari as she watched her friend locked inside that mental prison. Shinji dropped a sick ultimatum: go solo, Orochi, or Aoi takes the punishment. Himawari screamed at him to back off. Hachi let out a heavy sigh. This was getting way too messy, so she telepathically streamed the whole disaster right to the MC. Popping out another tail, Hachi severely spooked the nearby scouts. But before anyone could blink, half the monster mob got absolutely shredded into confetti. Himawari froze. Emerging from the dust was a silhouette she knew by heart. Shaking, she gasped out his name, not believing her own eyes. Namiki flashed a warm smile and dashed over. Catching her as her knees buckled, she brushed it off as a scratch, making his chest drop in relief. Still, her brain was glitching out. How the heck was this guy standing right in front of her? The craziest part? His vibe was entirely different. He literally just one-shot the boss like it was a tutorial mob. Namiki let out a breath, casually dropping that he'd been through some stuff, before asking why she was diving into this death trap. She confessed she came down here to grab his abandoned gear, her eyes shifting to Shinji, who was still glued to the floor. The MC locked eyes with the scum. It took Shinji a solid 10 seconds to place the face. Freaking out, he demanded to know how this dude survived the abyss. Namiki totally got the confusion. After all, Shinji was the snake who literally murdered him before his insane glow-up. Himawari snapped her head back, stunned. All her gut feelings about Shinji being wildly toxic were dead on. Shinji forced out a laugh, trying to gaslight her by calling it fake news. Pointing a shaking finger at Namiki, he trash-talked him as a level 100 nobody. He claimed that fluking a boss kill didn't magically make him OP. From the sidelines, Hachi was ready to throw hands over the disrespect, but the MC didn't need backup. He unleashed his aura, dropping a gravity-crushing pressure that paralyzed every scout in the zone. Shinji turned into a statue, his pea-sized brain completely failing to process this god-tier energy. Ayaka's jaw practically hit the floor. This wasn't just a power spike. This was entirely off the charts. The scanners went absolutely wild, level 6000, with skills literally breaking the system. A heavy silence choked the air until Namiki finally closed the gap. Shinji scrambled backward like a coward. Spotting his meltdown, a hypnotized Aoi actually asked if he was all right. Snapping from pure terror, he screamed at her to shut her mouth and viciously backhanded her. Himawari lunged to catch her friend, but the MC just stood there, his mind lagging because he didn't instantly recognize the girl. Cackling like a maniac, Shinji roasted him, calling it utterly pathetic to reunite with an old ally and draw a complete blank. Aoi just laid there, dead silent. Namiki's eyes went cold as he asked if the creep had been mind-controlling her from day one. Shinji just smirked, daring the MC to figure it out himself. Namiki whipped his head toward Himawari. Completely stunned, this creep had been trying to pull the exact same mind-control garbage on his idol. She confessed that the fake news of his death completely broke her, pushing her to shoulder the entire mission solo. But that lone wolf strategy totally backfired, dropping her straight into Shinji's twisted puppet show. Sure, she rocked an A-rank adventurer status, so his brainwashing couldn't entirely hijack her mind, but the villain didn't even sweat it. He just pivoted to a much easier target. Preying on her emotional wreckage, he snatched complete control of her head. Under the crushing psychic weight of his dark magic, I started glitching out again, crying out for mercy, a sight that made Namiki's blood absolutely boil. Suddenly, she shrieked at them to back off, claiming she was fighting for Shinji's sake, and launched a vicious assault. Our boy desperately parried a hurricane of heavy blows, chillingly aware that she was swinging to kill. Her raw physical output was off the charts, obviously jacked up by the villain's sinister buff. This cold-blooded brawler was nothing like the sweet girl he knew. Meanwhile, Himawari squared up to take Shinji head-on. The arrogant scumbag just cackled at her fighting stance, taunting that she was signing her own death warrant. Namiki desperately tried to snap Ai out of her trance, but she just shrieked about how he had been totally blind to her raging crush. Watching the chaos, Hachi casually noted her master was drowning in drama, taking Namiki totally by surprise. But she wasn't just there to spectate. Zero hesitation, She dove straight into the war zone to turn the tide. Shinji's jaw practically hit the floor as this familiar powerhouse blitzed into their airspace. Hachi instantly unleashed a brutal demolition spell, dubbed Extra Present, blasting Ai right in the chest. The massive shockwave locked the girl in place before her hazy eyes finally snapped back to reality. Frantic, the main character checked if she was breathing, while she just blinked at him through a total brain fog. A massive wave of relief hit him when he realized the mind control had shattered, as he watched her stagger up and grip her blade once more. She mumbled about needing to confess something huge, right as Hachi strolled over with a smug giggle. Hyped by the save, Namiki clocked that his girl had literally nuked the dark magic caging Ai's mind. Meanwhile, Shinji, looking absolutely clueless, demanded to know what just went down. Literally no one gave him the time of day, since Hachi was entirely focused on cuddling up to her master. Our hero groaned about her extreme clinginess right in the middle of a battlefield, but swore he would dish out the head pats later, which had her practically glowing. Ai side-eyed the whole cozy interaction and demanded to know who this gorgeous newcomer was. Before Namiki could even drop a single word, she muttered that she might have surrendered her spot to Himawari, but absolutely not to some random. Out of nowhere, Ai's aura completely detonated, leaving Namiki shook. Unapologetic, she spilled her guts, confessing she had been low-key obsessed with him since their academy days. Ever since he shielded her from that campus bully, he had basically become her entire world. Her feelings leveled up hard the second she joined the dojo, clinging to the memories of him hyping her up whenever she was on the verge of quitting. But the brutal reality? His eyes were always locked onto Himawari with that undeniable spark. The fake news of his death had ripped a massive hole in her soul. And now, catching him acting all cozy with Hachi, she snapped, screaming about why some random girl got to be by his side. She unleashed a lethal strike at Hachi, forcing Namiki to dive into the crossfire as a human shield. Bitter tears falling, Ai shrieked that she would never let this betrayal slide. That is when Shinji cracked a sinister smile, bragging that his skill literally fed on toxic vibes, mutating raw heartbreak into a literal curse. Namiki's rage hit its absolute boiling point, but the villain just stood there, flashing a punchable smirk. The malicious hex sank its claws back into Ai's brain, making her sob for them to end it. The main character had a brutal wake-up call. Throwing hands right now would just shatter her completely. He froze in his tracks, utterly paralyzed by the impossible choice. Then Himawari went full MVP, blitzing Shinji and totally shattering the cursed trinket fueling his magic. Rattled, the psycho leaped backward to desperately put some space between him and the squad. Himawari instantly primed herself for round 2, but Shinji screamed at her to back the heck off, declaring playtime was over. Roaring like an absolute maniac, he vowed he refused to take an L here. Doubling down on his psychic assault, he cranked his mind control up to 11. Ai became a hollow puppet once more, as the scumbag commanded her to surrender her entire soul to him. Disgusted by the total violation, Namiki roared, demanding to know how a human could be so twisted. He tried to close the gap, but the villain's dark magic was actively feasting on Ai's absolute despair, jealousy, and burning rage, milking every single drop of her trauma to skyrocket his own stats. Trapped in the heavy trance, Ai blindly agreed to sacrifice her life force, funneling massive waves of dark energy straight into his veins. Himawari watched in pure shock as Hachi aggressively whispered that this guy was top-tier trash, a literal parasite leeching off depression for a power boost. Shinji just grinned, high on the sickening surge of godlike energy pumping through him. Himawari dashed forward to shut it down, but he effortlessly swatted her away with a crushing gravity wave. Paralyzed mid-flight by the insane pressure, she had to listen to him flex about how invincible he had become. Still, the idol stubbornly refused to tap out, locking her focus purely on rescuing Ai. Shinji just threw his head back laughing, blaming her for the tragedy, and ordering her to kiss the dirt. The gravity field violently multiplied, right before Namiki stomped into the danger zone, to tank the force for her. Glaring daggers at Shinji, he ordered him to drop the act for torturing his closest friends. But the villain just scoffed, branding our boy a fake hero playing pretend. The absolute crushing weight of the gravity spell slammed down on Namiki's shoulders, designed to violently snap him to his knees. Yet, even with his massive power spike, the villain's jaw dropped when the protagonist didn't even flinch. Looking completely unbothered, our hero coldly demanded to know what sick, twisted garbage this guy had been pulling all along. Shinji dialed his gravity magic to the absolute max, literally trying to crush our boy. But Namiki? He didn't even flinch, leaving the villain completely shook. Hachi smirked from the sidelines, basically telling him to take the L. Catching major feelings of rage, Shinji pivoted his attack toward Aoi just to make the MC suffer, while Himawari shrieked in absolute panic. But time literally ran out for this dude. Faster than a glitch, Namiki teleported right behind his back and swung his blade with ruthless precision, branding the guy a straight-up menace. Shinji's agonizing screech ripped through the entire dungeon level, and as he gripped his shredded hand, nobody even stepped up to heal him. Totally mind-blown, he stuttered out a question, demanding to know how a mere level 100 nobody could pull off that kind of flex. Closing the gap, our protagonist dropped the ultimate bombshell. His stats were actually chilling at level 6000. He snatched the villain right by his collar, slammed him into the dirt, and ordered Hachi to throw down some healing magic. Rolling her eyes, she begrudgingly caved to the command, confirming the order through their telepathic chat. The dust slowly settled, and the rescue crew started hauling the battered adventurers out for emergency triage. This included the poor girl who got mind-controlled by Shinji's toxic magic. Bawling her eyes out, Aoi desperately clung to Himawari, spitting out a million apologies for the chaos. Himawari gently squeezed her fingers, reassuring her that the guilt trip was totally unnecessary. She then shot a soft look at Namiki, urging him to finally take a breather, swearing that the nightmare was officially over. Yet, even while being carried off to a safe zone, Aoi couldn't stop sobbing and pleading for redemption. Our surviving squad stood in heavy silence, watching the stretchers roll out. Namiki checked in on Himawari's vibe, and despite staring at the floor, she nodded that she was surviving. Flipping the script, she asked about his condition, and her face instantly lit up with the purest relief seeing him completely unharmed. That specific grin instantly dragged the MC back into major nostalgia, hitting him with flashbacks of when she was his literal idol, and the core reason he kept pushing forward. Hachi totally started giggling at the wholesome tension bubbling between the two, right before Ishihara sprinted over to crash the moment. The guild boss dumped a massive wave of gratitude on Namiki for basically carrying the team during the Orochi raid, which naturally made our guy blush a bit. Ishihara then dropped a major status update. Half of Orochi's 6 monstrous forms had officially bit the dust. This was a massive dub for the entire human race. Plus, locking up Shinji was the ultimate cherry on top, all thanks to the MC crashing the party. Packing up their gear on the 4th floor, the crew agreed it was time to extract and hit the main base. Along the way, a whole crowd of adventurers started hyping Namiki up for treating the Orochi fight like a tutorial boss. Getting glazed this hard left our overpowered hero, awkwardly scratching his head, completely out of his element. Slipping into his mind, Hachi smugly bragged that she nerfed those monster tails on purpose, demanding he pay up on his bounty. He mentally fist-bumped her, promising to settle the tab soon. Then, Ishihara formally asked for his gamertag. The second he dropped his name, a wave of realization hit the crowd, recognizing him as the legendary pioneer who originally maxed out at level 100. The gossip mill instantly fired up, with randoms muttering how insane it was for a supposedly washed-up player to pull off these god-tier moves. Even with a wild grind session, soloing an apocalypse threat like Orochi felt like straight cap to them. Himawari ruthlessly shut down the side chatter, while Ishihara awkwardly apologized for his guild members throwing shade. Bouncing back to business, the higher-ups officially bowed to his greatness and offered an open-ended bounty. This caught Namiki totally off guard until his telepathic roommate aggressively nudged him for a premium treat. Catching her drift about snagging top-shelf liquor, a smirk crept onto his face, perfectly knowing her exact kryptonite. Fast forward a bit, our guy finally exited the raid zone, stretching his muscles under a sky he felt like he hadn't seen in decades. Hachi threw some respect on his name for the grind, but casually pointed out that his mega crush was nowhere to be found. Himawari had actually volunteered to stay back and scrub the battlefield, prompting Hachi to ask if he was low-key salty about it. He brushed it off instantly, claiming that her selflessness was exactly her brand, and his only goal was to be the rock she could lean on. Right as he dropped that poetic line, Ayaka strolled into the frame. Jumping to the next morning, the dynamic duo took a stroll down to the adventurers' hub, right in the heart of the raid city. While navigating the neon-lit merchant district, Hachi started heavily mauling over being hard stuck on some mobile game stage. The MC basically had to give her a gamer crash course, explaining the brutal reality of stamina meters. She either had to wait 24 hours or swipe a card to keep playing. Her jaw literally dropped because microtransactions were an alien concept to her, and he had to break the news that recharging equaled burning real-world cash. Utterly lost, she questioned the dark magic of premium banners. He broke down the gacha system, defining it as literally gambling your bank account for random loot and waifus. You might pull a broken, god-tier item, or you might end up with absolute trash because the whole system is rigged on sheer luck. Realizing pay-to-win was the only fast track to leveling up, Hachi threw an absolute fit. The MC just nodded along with her rage, confirming that modern gaming is basically a scam. Panicking because her wallet was literally empty, she begged him for a side hustle strategy. He tossed out a few ideas: get a normal 9-to-5, set up a bank profile, or just dive into the dungeon crawling business like him. Yet, Even buried under an oversized hoodie, Hachi's aura was too cracked to ignore, turning heads at every corner. Back during the massive raid, half the server caught a glimpse of her ultimate monster phase, and the tea was already spilling across the guilds. Namiki was stressing hard, knowing that if her cover blew, the conspiracy theories would trigger a literal war. Add in the massive property damage they caused downtown, and keeping her identity as the apocalypse-tier serpent under wraps was a matter of life and death. Snapping him out of his paranoid spiral, she shouted at him for spacing out, forcing our boy to stutter out an apology for buffering in real life. She smirked, asking if he was overthinking things just like day one. With a massive grin, she completely dropped the mic, declaring she was officially signing up as a dungeon crawler, a twist that completely blue-screened his brain. Sweating bullets, Namiki scrambled to explain why dropping a Calamity-class boss into the guild roster was going to be a massive headache. Haruka seriously doubted the association would let a literal monster walk right in, but Hachi brushed it off, claiming his newly hyped reputation could totally pull some strings. He shot back that reality did not work that way, prompting a cheeky smirk from his partner. She openly confessed her ultimate goal was securing that sweet cash to dump into gacha pulls. While strolling down the street, Namiki pointed out, she had been glued to her screen for the past 24 hours, triggering Hachi to whine about him, ruining her epic gaming streak. High above them, shadowy figures stalked the duo in dead silence as they casually strolled toward the guild headquarters. Ayaka beamed the second they stepped inside, hyped that they finally showed up. Without missing a beat, our boy introduced Hachi as his totally normal friend. Hachi immediately trolled him by asking if servant was a better title, earning a hard eye roll from Haruka. Ayaka giggled at their chaotic sibling energy and escorted them deeper into the facility. When Namiki asked what this random summon was all about, the receptionist promised a full breakdown upstairs, before ushering them into the elevator. She dropped a massive hint, praising their insane teamwork during the brutal Orochi raid. Turns out, her glowing report caught the eye of the top brass, and now the head honcho wanted a face-to-face, leaving our MC totally blindsided. She casually threw in that Himawari and Ishihara got summoned too. They could have waited until tomorrow, but Ayaka was practically dragging them up there right now. The doors dinged open at the executive floor, while Namiki racked his brain trying to figure out what a big shot wanted with him. Suddenly, Hachi linked their minds through telepathy, asking if he caught that creepy vibe on the way up. A suffocating aura was closing in fast. Namiki nodded, his instincts screaming that someone had them in the crosshairs this entire time. His partner ordered him to keep his guard up. Stepping off on the 48th floor, Ayaka guided them straight to a massive set of double doors. She peeked inside to announce their arrival, and the big boss spun around with a welcoming grin. Mission accomplished, the receptionist dipped out of the office, trapping our protagonist alone with the sharply dressed executive. The guy flashed a $1 million smile, introducing himself as the undisputed president of the Explorers Association. But right after shaking Haruka's hand, his eyes locked onto Hachi, demanding to know who she really was. The old-timer kept his polite mask glued on, but Haruka instantly recognized the terrifying monster hiding behind that goofy facade. Hachi backed him up, warning that this dude was masking some insane power. Totally lost, our hero demanded to know why they got dragged up here on such short notice and bluntly asked what the endgame was. Flashing a wicked smirk, the president claimed he just wanted to show some gratitude for their clutch performance against Orochi and sweeping up those rogue villains afterward. His polite act shattered as he completely geeked out, hyping up the battle intel Kyogoku provided. He was absolutely mind-blown that this random kid obliterated 3 disaster-class threats with one single strike. Out of nowhere, the executive dropped the nice guy routine, his eyes turning dead serious as he interrogated Haruka about forging a sketchy contract with a known villain. The crushing pressure hit the young explorer instantly, sending shivers down his spine. He frantically tried to scan the boss until his partner snapped him back to reality, reminding him his detection stats were literally garbage. The demonic woman chimed in, revealing the old geezer was cloaked in a mythical tier spell, completely blocking her status check. Catching on to the danger, our guy asked if it matched the crazy magic she rocked earlier. She confirmed it was the exact same vibe, admitting she had zero clue how it worked, but this boomer definitely held the cheat codes. Realizing this suit was built different, she shoved her partner behind her back. Without warning, the president sparked up a terrifying skill, casually suggesting a lethal sparring match. Cut to the hallway, where 2 random employees were strolling by. They asked the secretary if the VIP guests were inside, and she confirmed. They were probably just having a cozy chat with the boss. Boom! The heavy oak door suddenly exploded right onto her head. Reacting purely on instinct, Himawari drew her blade, desperately scanning the chaos after feeling that monstrous surge of mana. Haruka screamed at his teammate to stay out of the blast zone. The old man unleashed a lethal energy beam straight at Haruka, Our boy desperately spammed his divine observation, but the system glitched out. Sweating bullets, he pivoted to Hachi, ordering her to protect Kyogoku and Ishihara at all costs. Then, he sprinted straight into the crossfire to shield Himawari. Throwing caution out the window, our hero desperately tried to parry the incoming nuke, but only managed to deflect it in half. Trapped with zero escape route, the boy tackled his ally, wrapping his arms around her to tank the hit. Out of nowhere, Hachi warped right into the line of fire, eating the entire blast point blank and flashing her demonic true form. Even with smoke rising off her flesh, she just flashed a wicked grin, checking if her master caught any strays. Haruka was totally freaking out, swearing he was safe while panicking over her brutal wounds. The demon casually shrugged it off, claiming she just slipped up for a second. Himawari gasped out a massive thank you, begging to get a healer for those massive gashes, but Hachi could literally not care less. Flexing her overpowered stats, Hachi casually triggered a regeneration skill, absolutely blowing the swordswoman's mind. As her torn flesh knitted back together flawlessly in 3 seconds flat, Haruka checked in one last time, and his partner gave him the green light. Locking her eyes on the boss, she dropped the playful act, warning him they had to go full tryhard right now, or they were leaving this room in body bags. Watching the dust clear, the president was absolutely hyped. These kids were way more busted than the paperwork gave them credit for. His bloodlust spiked, ready for round 2, and our duo locked into battle stances, until the secretary completely ruined the vibe by shrieking like an absolute banshee. A sharp command slices through the chaos, forcing the crew to finally chill out and start scrubbing the absolute wreck they just made. The president sheepishly rubs his neck, totally backtracking on his crazy power trip, while his secretary sighs, reminding him she practically spoon-fed him Namiki's actual threat level. She ruthlessly calls him out, pointing out that if he actually popped off, he would literally nuke the entire block into dust. She demands he use his brain for once, and this absolute clown nods along, claiming he gets it while completely spacing out. Haruka strolls onto the scene, totally clueless to the heavy vibe shift, demanding answers until the secretary finally breaks it all down. Turns out, this whole meetup was a trap to vibe check him, purely to figure out if this duo was about to become their worst nightmare. Then she drops a massive bombshell, straight up asking if Haichi is the legendary Orochi of disaster, sending the whole room into sheer panic. She raises an eyebrow, demanding to know how they cracked his secret, but the president simply flexes his aura, letting her sense the terrifying, dark energy lurking deep inside him. Haichi's eyes go wide as it clicks. He mutters that this beast belongs at the absolute bottom of the abyss, or, at least, it was supposed to be locked away down there. Our boy glances at his squadmate, asking if they have crossed paths before, and she drops the lore, admitting they share some serious history. She does not hold back, admitting she fully expected a top-tier beast like Lindworm to ghost humanity forever, instead of locking down a cheap soul contract. Haruka connects the dots, his mind racing with the insane possibility of more hidden dragons. But before he can even ask, Haichi suddenly interrogates the nervous secretary about her real identity. The boss in the suit steps up, casually dropping that she is actually a rare half-human, half-monster hybrid, bound by a pact to his own mother. Himawari gasps, whispering that she had heard wild rumors about these hybrids, but catching one in the flesh was totally unreal. Flustered, the secretary confesses she keeps her monstrous half strictly under wraps, except for those rare, dangerous moments when her emotions completely hijack her control. Parts of her monster form keep glitching through, forcing her to lock down her aura just to pass as normal. One slip-up means getting permanently banned from the dungeon city. When Himawari questions if she deals with crazy discrimination, the secretary drops the harsh truth. Society heavily cancels hybrids. But plot twist, Haichi clocked her true identity while she was totally passing as human. The secretary shrugs it off, admitting her dungeon roots made her sloppy at blending in. Right on cue, our boy Haruka awkwardly raises his hand. He totally admits he felt something off about her too. Cue Himawari instantly snapping at her squadmate, furious that he kept everyone in the dark. Himari's mind is racing. She demands to know if Kyogoku was actually spilling facts about Haichi being a literal walking natural disaster. The secretary confirms the terrifying reality. Ishihara is completely stunned, mind blown that an apocalyptic dragon could morph into such a stunning girl. Catching onto the tension, Himawari demands a full breakdown of the situation while Haruka practically drops to his knees, pleading for mercy. He promises a massive lore drop later, begging her to just chill for 5 seconds. Watching the chaos, the guild president smirks, heavily amused by the drama. He forces a scenery change to the conference room. Once settled, the secretary pulls up the official intel, dropping the final verdict. Officially, Haruka and Haichi are cleared of all threat levels. She gives them a standard corporate thank you, but the scarred veteran interrupts the vibe. He calls them out for acting super defensive. Haruka mentally screams completely justified, since the boss literally tried to execute him 2 minutes ago. Not to mention the guy is bonded to a deadly lindworm. But the boss waves off the tension, reminding everyone that Haichi, despite being a world-ending Orochi, actually threw down to save human lives. He promises that one tiny deathmatch doesn't mean they are suddenly enemies. The top dog demands their absolute trust. Backing up his boss's play, the loyal subordinate steps in. He massively hypes up the entire Orochi strike team for surviving the absolute bloodbath. Flashing a blinding smile, the secretary drops the hammer. She slaps a massive non-disclosure agreement on the whole incident, baiting them with a fat paycheck to keep their mouths shut. Himari starts to protest the sketchy deal, but Haruka completely folds, bowing respectfully to secure the bag. The boss then drops a nuke, skipping all the rules. He bumps Haruka straight to rank A status. Our guy is low-key panicking, sweating over the insane jump from bottom barrel rank D. But the veteran isn't having any imposter syndrome today. He flashes back to Haruka, hard carrying the raid. In his eyes, the kid didn't just earn that elite badge, he practically owns it. Himari demands the guild reconsider backing her day one teammate up since she knows his real potential. Finally, the tension drops and hands are shaken. The guildmaster locks it in, the dragon girl is officially on the payroll. Hearing the massive win, Haichi absolutely tackles Haruka in a bear hug. She is hyped beyond belief that they will never separate. Meanwhile, Himari is glaring at them, radiating pure, unfiltered jealousy. She commands Haruka to drop the entire backstory on whatever is going on between them. Cutting to the chaotic city streets. The forums are exploding over a nobody jumping straight to the big leagues, but the community is totally calling fake news on the rumors. Screens are blowing up with articles about the ultimate glow-up. Out of nowhere, a dude rocking some serious Michael Jackson drip slides into the frame. He smoothly asks to peek at the glowing screen. A tiny blonde menace named Ichigo doesn't even flinch at the weird intrusion. She casually tells him to knock himself out while she hits the bath. Suddenly the vibe shifts as Himari gets slammed with a dark flashback of her hometown getting swarmed. Young Himari throws herself in front of a terrified Haruka, frantically checking his pulse. The brave kid forces a smile, claiming the bleeding is barely a paper cut. Confusion distracts her for a split second, wondering why monsters breach the safe zone. That single moment of hesitation invites a lethal blindside attack. Watching the horror unfold, young Haruka grips his blade, ready to risk it all against the beast. But Himari refuses to let him die. She tanks the brutal slash straight to her shoulder. Haruka completely shatters at the sight, sobbing uncontrollably while swearing he will level up. He vows to become the ultimate shield, so nobody ever touches her again. Snapping back to reality, Heichi is treating the local boutique like her personal runway. She spins around fishing for Haruka's reaction. Our dense hero throws out a weak compliment, while Himari takes the complete opposite route. She absolutely glazes the dragon girl's fit, hyping her up like a true bestie, riding that positive energy. The squad demands to know her magic trick for hiding that massive tail. Heichi drops the secret, crediting Kyogaku's pro tips, making Haruka instantly realize something. He points out those two have been hanging out way too much off-screen. Ignoring him, the dragon girl officially claims the killer outfit. But her shopping addiction is just waking up, dragging the exhausted crew toward the next boutique. Himari practically begs her to hit the brakes. She reminds the girl that shoplifting is highly illegal, and cash is required. Cue the awkward silence, as Heichi admits her bank account is literally at zero. Flipping the puppy dog eyes, she tries to make Haruka swipe his card. He's totally ready to take the financial hit, but Himari swoops in with her wallet out. Haruka tries to block her card, but Himari brushes him off. She insists on treating the dragon, paying off the massive favor from their last dungeon run. She claims this officially clears their debt. Hearing that, Heichi lights up like a Christmas tree, declaring Himari the absolute greatest. She begs to drop the formalities and switch to a first-name basis, which earns an easy green light. Fast forward a bit. The trio crashes at a trendy cafe, where Haruka sincerely blesses Himari for bailing out his wallet. She just bursts out laughing. She flexes that keeping her around is basically a life hack. Meanwhile, a completely drained Heichi pouts, desperate to finally warp back to their apartment. Haruka confirms and the woman's eyes light up. She literally starts humming a villain tune, absolutely hyped for round 2, leaving Haruka totally caught off guard. She really wants to keep playing this deadly game. Back at their spot, Himari catches wind of this and instantly gives them the side eye. Wait a minute. Are these two actually living together? Yep, Haruka nods quickly, defending himself by explaining the poor girl was flat broke and practically homeless. Heichi immediately chimes in, acting like her living arrangement is just common sense. A loyal servant always sticks with her master, obviously, she states. That specific word totally drops Himari's jaw. Master, why on earth is she calling this guy that? In a flash, Himari slams Haruka against the wall, getting right in his personal space. Are you secretly into some weird kink? She grills him, sending his anxiety skyrocketing in 0.5 seconds. Himari then pitches a wild idea she and Heichi should just move in together. Heichi instantly rejects it, refusing to ditch her beloved master, so Himari just shrugs and invites Haruka to tag along too. The awkward tension snaps when Haruka's phone starts buzzing like crazy. He steps away to check the caller ID. It's Kyogoku, and he's dropping an absolute bombshell. The Explorers Association is slamming the panic button. The secretary sounds completely frantic on the line, begging for backup. An absolute swarm of goblins just hijacked the third floor of the dungeon. Worse, a massive goblin champion is leading the charge, and the body count of critically injured explorers is spiking fast. She desperately pleads for their squad to swoop in and save the day. Without missing a beat, the crew locks in, accepts the deadly mission, and sprints straight toward the chaos. Deep inside the hellish labyrinth, Haichi side-eyes Haruka, asking if his stamina is draining after their non-stop marathon. Haruka grunts, wiping sweat, revealing they still have over 1 kilometer left to crush. That brutal reality check instantly kills Haichi's vibe. She groans, asking why they are literally walking like peasants, which finally makes a light bulb go off in Haruka's brain. Her hyperspeed only triggers in water, and this tunnel is bone dry. Annoyed by the cardio, Heichi demands they just steal a car to speed things up. But Himari shuts that down real quick. We don't have clearance for guild rides, she sighs, dreading the insane mountain of bureaucratic paperwork required to get one. She flashes back to the Orochi raid. They begged for wheels, but the logistics team completely ghosted them because the system was basically crashing under the pressure. Too many emergencies meant 0 available cars. Heichi rolls her eyes hard, absolutely disgusted by how humans blindly worship red tape during life or death situations. Haruka plays peacemaker, claiming those annoying rules stop total anarchy. As they jog, he scans the surprisingly pristine dungeon architecture, genuinely mind-blown by whoever funded this high-end setup. Out of nowhere, a vicious migraine spikes through his skull. Haichi instantly goes into panic mode, asking if he's dying, but Haruka brushes it off, throwing her a grateful smile for caring. A faint glow slices through the dark tunnel ahead. But when they burst into the clearing, their brains completely short-circuit. The floor is absolutely littered with goblin bodies. Every single monster is out cold, totally decimated. Haruka aggressively scans the carnage, realizing some absolute unit definitely beat them to the punch. That's when they spot him. A dude literally dripping with Michael Jackson energy is just chilling amidst the wreckage, flashing them a wildly creepy smirk. Haruka is shook. Did this guy solo an entire goblin army? But the mystery dude shakes his head, dropping a massive hint he wasn't flying solo. Instantly, the trio drops into combat stances. Haruka aggressively scans the shadows, yelling that the room is empty, but the man just chuckles, calling him blind. My backup is literally right next to me, the guy smirks. Out of nowhere, a terrifying pressure drops, and Haruka finally senses the hostile aura locking onto him. His blood runs freezing cold. A girl is standing dangerously close, and his radar never even beeped. The man smugly brags that his lethal shadow has been standing there the entire time. The stealthy girl finally speaks, sizing Haruka up, and admitting he's got decent power. Before he can even process that, she explodes forward, aiming a killer strike right at his throat. Haruka barely sidesteps death, his heart pounding out of his chest at her insanely cracked speed. The girl smirks, realizing the hype around this kid's strength was 100% real. Since you're the real deal, I won't hold back either, she declares. The fight instantly turns into a high-speed blur, while Mia analyzes the absolute chaos from the sidelines. Mia realizes her squad mate is just probing Himari's defenses. But Ichigo isn't having it, ruthlessly mocking the weak defense and claiming they need to push way harder. She unleashes an absolute hurricane of strikes. Haruka starts sweating bullets, desperately yelling to draw the aggro away from his overwhelmed teammate. Himari is internally screaming, mind blown by how this literal child hits like a massive freight train. Suddenly, the enemy triggers a lethal vibration hex right onto the woman's core. Warning alarms blare in Himari's head. If she takes another hit like that, her body will literally short-circuit. Ichigo completely taunts her, daring the woman to unleash her ultimate move. "Don't you dare look down on me," Himari roars. She flexes every fiber of her being, glowing with raw energy, as her opponent instantly recognizes the massive stat buff. Boom! They collide like two meteorites, the shockwave blasting both of them backward. A spark of mutual respect flares up, but the crazy kid grins, shouting that round 3 is just starting. Himari refuses to flinch, launching herself forward for the kill. But literally a millisecond before impact, Mari casts a teleport spell, completely swapping their coordinates and glitching the matrix. The spell perfectly aborts the bloody clash. Ichigo snaps at her partner for hijacking the duel, while the mysterious dude casually shrugs and drops a half-hearted apology for ruining the fun. But petty drama doesn't matter anymore. Their true target is practically breathing down their necks. Haruka grits his teeth, warning everyone that a massive wave of pure nightmare fuel is incoming. Cut to some random explorer sprinting for his absolute life, his stamina completely nuked. Right behind him, a grotesque horde of mutated freaks bursts from the shadows, hungry for blood. Towering behind the grunt monsters is a colossal boss-level titan commanding the pack. Himari locks eyes with Haruka, double-checking his insane tactical read. 100%. Haruka confirms, his eyes glowing as he runs the math. 30 mobs, plus 1 alpha boss. ETA, exactly 60 seconds. Mari is low-key blown away by his crazy analytical skills, but Ichigo catches her teammate admiring the enemy and dramatically gags, calling her fangirling completely gross. The mysterious dude cuts the banter, declaring a temporary truce because this boss fight is legit deadly. Right on cue, the monstrous horde crashes into the room. They are ruthlessly hunting down the injured stragglers. Haruka locks his sights onto the absolute mammoth in the back, instantly tagging it as the dungeon's apex predator. Suddenly, Haruka's system UI flashes, calculating the most cracked, flawless strategy to wipe the floor with these things. The path to victory violently clicks in his brain. He realizes a massive team combo attack is their only shot. Slipping into pure leader mode, he orders Himari to vanguard charge with the kid, while screaming at Haichi to lay down heavy sniper cover. He steps up to shield the bystanders and take down the boss, but first things first. Our guy drops a quick intro to the duo, checking if Mia can back up the girls. The guy giving off major pop star energy is totally down for it. He's honestly blown away. Our main character literally just hotwired a flawless battle strategy using everyone's unique skills on the fly. Suddenly, a beast snaps its jaws at Himari. She blocks it clean and strikes back instantly. Right then, it clicks for her. These freaks aren't just mindless, they're moving with explorer-level tactics. Ichigo yells for her to keep her guard up, pointing out the horde creeping up her blind spot. Himari absolutely shreds through them with her blade. Even the youngest squad member catches on to the monster's bizarre behavior. Without missing a beat, she calls out to Mia. In a flash, her axe transforms into a massive, heavy-hitting weapon just as the swarm charges. One devastating swing. That's all it takes to obliterate the entire mob. Seeing this, the undead boss completely loses its mind and dashes straight for an ally. Catching the carnage, Haruka mentally flags that as a potential unique skill. He shouts a warning to Haichi that the boss is no joke, laying down cover fire so her master can close the gap. Using that perfectly timed distraction, our boy unleashes a brutal combo on the monster, executing it flawlessly. Cue the sweet sound of a double level up. Haruka and his duo hype up their win. Off to the side though, Himari just quietly stares at her teammate, totally zoned out. He catches her looking and asks what's up. She just flashes a soft smile, waving it off like it's no big deal. But internally, she's reeling over his massive glow-up. Meanwhile, the rescued explorers are literally bowing in gratitude for the clutch save. Our guy waves off the royal treatment, totally humble. Himari beams, telling him straight up how incredibly proud she is of his growth. He gets instantly flustered. It flashes him back to his past life, where everyone clowned him for being painfully weak despite hitting level 100. But the vibe is completely different now. He's stacked up some serious power, and finally found a squad that actually has his back. Haruka is still totally clueless about why he scored the God's Test ability. He's crossing his fingers for answers eventually, but to unlock that mystery, they've got to dive into the dungeon's most lethal depths. Fast forward to the present, our 21-year-old protagonist is rocking an A-rank status. His family is MIA, adding a dark layer to his backstory. Deep down though, he's basically a golden retriever, super caring, endlessly patient, and fiercely loyal. When he's chilling, you'll catch him sewing or geeking out over blade designs. Growing up in a gritty dungeon, city, orphanage, is exactly how his path collided with Himari Tachibana. Later on, he started training at his dad's rundown dojo in the slums. As for the leading lady, she's 24 and absolutely tearing it up as an A-rank explorer. Hailing from the Flow District, she grew up in a single-parent household. When she's off the clock, she's all about mastering traditional tea ceremonies and perfecting her calligraphy. Tragically, she lost her mom to a brutal illness back when she was just a kid in elementary school. Raised solely by her dad from then on, she channeled all that grief directly into hardcore martial arts training. She basically lived at the dojo, grinding out insane stats in swordplay, spearmanship, and archery. By high school, she was already dropping into dungeons as a rookie explorer. The media instantly hyped her up as a total prodigy. Thanks to the viral attention and her massive spike in popularity, an underground fan club popped up out of nowhere. But let's rewind 7 years. A deeply traumatic incident went down when a mystery beast ambushed Haruka. He was just grinding at the dojo when it hit. Himari threw herself into the crossfire to save him, and took some heavy damage. By the time backup rolled in, the shadow monster had already vanished into thin air, leaving its motive completely unknown. Mia spills the tea, claiming that specific nightmare was the exact spark that totally shifted the dynamic between the two teens. Cutting back to the present, Kyogoku abruptly tells the guy to dial it back. He looks confused, wondering if he messed up the vibe. She bluntly reminds him they were supposed to be reviewing Haruka's combat logs, but he was going on a massive tangent. The deadpan suit sitting across the table clears his throat, asking if they can finally get back on track. Mia rubs the back of his neck, tossing out an apology for yapping too much. Pivoting back to the briefing, the suit highlights a major red flag. While analyzing Haruka's recent boss fight, something absolutely wild stood out. The name of his ultimate skill, and its exact mechanics were completely off the grid. He leans in questioning if the brass is absolutely certain this kid inked a pact with the disaster class Orochi. He admits the protagonist is a walking glitch, a raw newbie sitting at level 100. Mia argues this has to be a system error. Nobody skyrockets through the levels that fast. The veteran executive chimes in, admitting the kid's insane stats caught his radar too. He recalls clashing with the boy in a closed room. When the old man triggered his mythic tier magic, the kid instantly fired back with divine prediction. The veteran was left completely speechless by the kid's god-tier reflexes and lethal precision. Mia jumps back in, adding that during the recent raid, our boy's shot calling was insanely elite, especially considering he read the squad's loadouts in seconds. The chairman folds his hands, concluding that Haruka is a massive wildcard hiding a very dark secret, yet he can't deny the kid is incredibly fascinating. Kyogoku smirks, floating a toxic idea. Wouldn't it be way more entertaining to just leak his confidential stats to the public? She pushes for them to keep digging into his background. The chairman shuts it down, ordering Mia to stick strictly to the current surveillance mission. Mia taps out, heading for the exit. Just as he grabs the door handle, the receptionist calls out, telling him to drop her a text. The second he scores new intel. Walking away, Mia shivers, realizing making an enemy out of that terrifying old man is the last thing he ever wants to do. Stepping outside, he bumps straight into Ichigo. She's instantly nosy, totally dying to know what went down between him and the president. He brushes it off like it was zero big deal. Then Mia drops a bombshell, pitching the idea of her squatting up with Haru. Instantly, her whole face lights up. The guy quietly watches, wondering if Haruka will actually take the bait. Cut to a little later, and Himari is pacing around the meetup spot. She's getting totally impatient waiting on her squad. Out of nowhere, those two knuckleheads sprint into view, gasping for air, while Haichi complains about all the cardio. Our MC quickly deflects the blame, claiming they're dragging behind purely because trying to yank this girl out of bed was an absolute nightmare. She snaps right back, complaining she was tossing and turning until sunrise. Haru isn't having it, he warned them about the early rollout. Meanwhile, Haichi gripes that this trash tier zone isn't even worth looting. But Haruka is totally done with the endless whining. Taking the hint, the girl quickly turns to Himari, feeling super guilty, and drops a heavy apology for the delay. Himari totally brushes it off with a warm smile. Relieved, the girl tackles her in a massive hug, calling her an absolute angel low-key, throwing heavy shade at a certain strict master in the process. Speak of the devil, Mia finally rolls up with his buddy, hitting them with his own apology. He completely tosses Ichigo under the bus, claiming she's basically dead to the world every single morning. Apparently, her low blood pressure leaves her utterly nerfed before noon. With the whole crew finally assembled, they plunge straight into the dark abyss of the dungeon. The mission: absolute annihilation of the dungeon boss and its entire mob army lurking at the bottom. Staring down the corridor, Haruka hits Mia with a serious question about the quest's shady origins. He knows for a fact this gig never hit the Explorers Guild board. Plus, the payout attached to it is insanely massive. We're talking a cool 5 million. Haichi instantly runs the math, a clean 1 million a pop, and her eyes practically turn into dollar signs as she dreams of blowing it all on microtransactions. Mia immediately plays the trust card, begging the squad to just roll with it, despite keeping the client's identity completely wiped from the record. Naturally, Ichigo starts grilling him endlessly. He desperately tells her to just let it slide for now. Shifting gears, he flashes back to how completely stoked she was earlier. The prospect of getting the old squad back together had her hyped. The blonde quickly plays it cool, denying it, but slyly hints that a certain someone else is definitely catching feelings about the reunion. Our boy definitely catches the subtext, but locks his focus dead onto the mission. As they walk, Haruka reflects on the absolute insane flip his life took. Unlocking the divine prediction skill changed the entire game, even if half of its mechanics are still a total mystery to him. The massive perk: he can farm a broken amount of XP. But there's a catch: if the wrong explorer ever caught wind of this cheat code, they'd hunt him down in a heartbeat. Without warning, a sharp familiar spike of pain splits his skull. Himari instantly clocks his pained expression, panic flashing in her eyes. He forces a smile, waving off her concern and insisting he's totally good. But deep down, a heavy gut feeling washes over him. He feels a massive revelation hovering just out of reach. Himari is completely lost, and honestly he lacks the words to even string a proper explanation together. Suddenly, the system blares, a mental warning: disaster-class threats are rushing their location at blinding speed. Boom! He triggers divine prediction, his brain, running millions of combat simulations in a split second, watching him suddenly freeze up like a statue. Mia's suspicion completely spikes. Haruka feels the heavy stare burning into his back, getting totally irritated. He realizes he used to write Mia off as just some edgy lone wolf, but now he's starting to look incredibly sus. Haichi chimes in, admitting the dude is practically an enigma. Haruka quickly drops the game plan. The Vision insists they split into 2 separate units, and he desperately needs her to play along. She quickly alerts the squad. A brutal pack of goblin knights is storming their way. Getting boxed in by heavy hitters like that: absolute game over. To prevent a total wipeout, dividing their forces is the only viable play. Haichi immediately turns to Himari, barking out the new orders. She tells her to stick with Mia and hold the right corridor while her Haruka and Ichigo dive into the left tunnel to prep a deadly ambush. Himari is totally thrown off by this sudden bossy vibe. Heiichi promises to spill the tea later. It's a completely garbage answer, but she swallows her pride and nods. Before dipping, she throws Haruka a worried glance, telling him to stay alive. He hits back with a confident promise to see her on the other side. The squad shatters, each diving into the shadows of their respective paths. Mia quickly connects the dots. They benched him intentionally. Breaking the tense silence, Himari asks if he can throw hands in close quarters. He humbly claims he just knows the bare bones. She then breaks down the harsh reality. These monsters are absolute masters of pack hunting. She quickly drafts a survival strategy, assigning him as her rear guard. Smirking, Mia teases her hardcore serious energy, pointing out it's the exact opposite of Haruka's careless vibe. Out of nowhere, he drops the bomb, asking if they're secretly an item. Her face goes instantly crimson. Flustered and stumbling over her words, Himari completely shuts the conversation down, calling it wildly inappropriate for a life-or-death situation. He chuckles, claiming he was just trying to lighten the mood. Bam! A feral goblin on a direwolf lunges out of the darkness, straight for Himari's throat, but she barely parries the fatal strike. Mia draws his weapon, asking if playtime is finally over. Himari recklessly blasts forward to counterattack, but one of the beasts exhales a thick, choking fog. Panic hits her like a truck as her vision drops to absolute zero. A shadowy figure slips behind her blind spot, and with a harsh clang, her blade is snatched right out of her grip. Completely defenseless and backed against the wall, she frantically searches for Mia, who has completely ghosted her. Before she can react, a brutal strike sends her crashing to the cold stone floor. Heavy clawed limbs pin her to the ground. Staring up into their vile, drooling faces, pure dread washes over her. She instantly realizes the horrific reality of their intentions. Terrified screams rip from her lungs, pleading for them to stop, while she thrashes wildly beneath them. But her muscles are completely frozen, drained of every ounce of fight. She spits venom, calling the monsters absolute garbage, but her defiance is cut brutally short. Vicious fangs sink deep into her shoulder. An agonizing shriek echoes through the dungeon as the goblin stares down at her, a twisted, sickly grin stretched across its face. She shudders, knowing exactly how these vile creatures operate, viewing women and kids as nothing more than prey for their twisted desires. Their whole sick game plan is to completely shatter her fighting spirit. But here's the catch. Lowly mobs like this absolutely do not pack the kind of power to literally sap the life out of her. It hits her. That toxic mist from earlier is the culprit. Meanwhile, the gash on her shoulder is throbbing, spreading pure agony. Panic starts creeping in as she desperately scans the area for an escape route. Tamari curses herself, feeling absolutely pathetic right now. How could she drop her guard like a rookie? Just the thought of Haruka catching her in this humiliating weak state makes her blood boil with frustration. One of the goblins snatches up her own dagger, ready to deliver the final strike. But out of nowhere, its eyes glaze over under some random hypnosis, and the blade clatters to the dirt. She has absolutely zero clue what just went down, but she is definitely not wasting this miracle opening. Channeling every ounce of her grit, the girl violently rips herself free. Survival mode is fully activated. She knows pausing for even a second means game over. Suddenly, another creep lunges straight for her blind spot. Whip fast, she spins around and violently buries an arrow into the attacker. The rest of the pack instantly swarms, trying to box her into a corner. But Himari flawlessly dances out of their trap, ruthlessly striking down the wolf beast. Still, the heavy toll from her shredded shoulder is seriously catching up to her. The burning pain spikes to an unbearable level. She realizes she has to end this bloodbath right this second and makes her move. Spotting her discarded sword in the dirt, she makes a mad dash for it, only to take a brutal, bone-crushing hit straight to the back. Yet against all odds, the warrior forces herself back to her feet. Gripping the hilt with everything she has left, she unleashes a massive, glowing skill from her blade.